Hello everyone, Justin Vacula here with another video in my Stoic Philosophy video series, applying wisdom from the ancient world to modern life. This is video number 5, Facing Election Results with a Stoic Mindset. You can find me online, justinvacula.com, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So this video comes about following the results of the presidential election last night in the United States, Donald Trump securing the presidency. There's been a lot of negative reactions on my social media feeds, many people upset with the results, some responses ranging from just mere being upset, blaming others, threatening to move to Canada, facing a good deal of stress, throwing up, and some more dangerous responses, people talking about self-harm, and that prompted me to make this video. So how can we use some Stoic writings to cope with these election results if we happen to be impacted negatively by them? First, evaluate what is in your power. Should you torment yourself by that which is outside your sphere of choice? Epictetus writes here in Discourses Book 1 Chapter 12, you are merely creating trouble for yourself. Book 1 Chapter 6, what concern to me is anything that happens while I have greatness of soul. So this is central within Stoic thought, that we want to recognize what is in our control, to be content with the way the world is, even if it happens to be not to our liking, to focus on what is in our control, and to have gratitude for the positive things that are going for us, that we do enjoy about life. Cultivating virtue, understanding that we can get through what we perceive as tragedy. So with this election, well, the American people have decided that Trump will be the next president. We might have contributed our efforts toward this election. Maybe we joined a political campaign, maybe we tried to persuade other voters, maybe we actually went out and voted, but the decision ultimately is a collective one. It is not simply us making that decision. So this is the result. We simply have to bear with it rather than wallowing in misery, rather than saying that life is miserable. We have to understand that this is outside of our choice, and we have to simply cope with the election results. This seems to be the best way to go about things, as it may be a bitter pill to swallow, as many people have taken it as a personal attack that, well, Trump is going to be president, we're going to lose certain freedoms, these disastrous consequences are going to happen. Well, what control do we have over that? What control do we have over the decision of this election? Well, it seems that it's pretty low. We can, though, have control over some things that happen in the future. I'll get into that later in the video. All right, so next slide. Are catastrophic impressions appropriate? Epictetus writes, Discourses Book 1 Chapter 11, in a word, neither death nor exile nor pain nor anything of that kind is the cause of our doing or not doing anything, but rather our suppositions and judgments. So we're to first step aside from our immediate reaction to this event, to this election, our thoughts that we have, and wonder, well, these fears that we have, are they likely to come true? Can we take a step back and really evaluate whether we're going to nuke another country or be nuked, for instance? All these disastrous consequences that people are talking about, it could be good to reflect upon this and wonder, well, are these things actually going to happen, or might we be catastrophizing about the situation? Either way, as I mentioned in the previous slide, a lot of this seems to be outside of our control, so let's simply deal with the situation as it's presented to us. We have to recognize that change is a part of life. A political election happens, and a new person becomes president. That's inevitable. Epictetus writes in Book 3, Chapter 24 of the Discourses, this section here, he writes, but what if my friend there should die? What else could that signify except that men who are mortal have died? Do you at once wish to live old and yet not to see the death of anyone you love? Do you not know that in a long course of time many and various events must necessarily happen? That a fever must get the better of one person, a highwayman of another, a tyrant of a third, For such is the world we live in, such are those who live in it with us. Heat and cold, improper diet, journeys by land, voyages by sea, winds, and all kinds of accidents destroy some, banish others, and send one on an embassy, another on campaign. Sit down, then, and get distraught at all these things, lamenting, disappointed, wretched, dependent on something other than yourself, and distraught not at one thing or two, but thousands and thousands. So to summarize here, yes, change is going to happen. What is up to us, though? Well, how we're going to cope with it, how we're going to face the situation. Recognize that this change is inevitable. Recognize that the political process happens. We're going to have a new president. So how are we to respond to this? As he writes, shall we be distraught about this and all of the things that happen that we might not like? Well, that doesn't seem to be very productive. But how can we be productive? Well, we can see adversity as something that can strengthen and motivate us. He writes in Discourses Book One Chapter 24, difficulties are the thing that show what men are. You may become an Olympic victor, and that cannot be done without sweat. So if we see this election result as something that is negative, well, how can this strengthen and motivate us? It might be a hard pill to swallow in thinking that, well, oh, these bad things happen, so this is an opportunity to be better. Well, of course, we might want the good things to happen. We might want our certain candidate to win, but in this case, when a candidate we didn't like happened to take office, well, now how are we going to cope with that situation? That's something that we can wonder. The difficulties that people will face, well, maybe reframing the situation and viewing this as an opportunity to grow, to become more active, and to lend our strengths to what we can control, what we can change, to make a good influence on society and the world, and to cultivate virtue in our own life. There will be blows upon the way, there will be things that happen we don't like, but we simply have to move on and deal with it appropriately. Take action and be productive rather than merely complaining. This is pretty common throughout the Stoic writings here. Epictetus writes in Discourses Book One Chapter 6, speaking of someone who is complaining, "Oh, but my nose is running." He responds, "How much better would it be for you to wipe it away than to complain?" He continues, speaking of a man, what would have been the use of those arms of his, and his strength overall, of his endurance and greatness of mind, if such circumstances and opportunities have not stirred him to action and exercised him? So here we can have these positive traits about ourselves. We can have strengths. But if we're not going to use them, we're not going to become active, we're not going to be stirred to action, we're not going to exercise our strengths, this doesn't seem to be very productive. Surely there's a time for leisure, surely there's a time to rest, and maybe even a time to complain. But how we respond to it is going to be up to us. What positive things can we do? How can we be productive? This is something that we can wonder following this election and reflect on the good things, again, that are going on. What can we do? How can we take action that's appropriate? And how can we perhaps work toward good change in the world, cultivating virtue and applying ourselves? Rather than merely complaining and doing nothing, well, we can do something positive. We can wipe our nose rather than just saying that our nose is running, as Epictetus writes. I have some additional resources in the low bar here, a piece from The Onion, a satirical website for those who might not be aware, titled "Nation's Optimists Need to Shut the Fuck Up Right Now." It's a parody of a man who's saying, well, things aren't so bad. You see, it's only 4 years. The powers of Trump are limited. Change has happened before. So this is a Stoic mindset I think they're advocating in this piece while making fun of the situation, as The Onion usually does. You can read that. Maybe some humor in that can help you. And another piece from Philly.com, "How to Cope If Your Side Lost on Election Day." Alright, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. You can find me online, justinvacula.com, also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you've been helped by this series and wish to donate, feel free to visit my website and do that. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more.